In 1819, a detachment of sword-wielding cavalrymen loaded in an enormous workers' rights outcry in Manchester. The bloodbath how accompanied is the object of a new movie starring Maxine Peake. But who was the man who orderly the Peterloo slaughter? In a coffee house in Sloane Box, the writer and prudent equal Julian Fellowes is considering his largest infamous forefather. The maker of the hit ITV AMD Downton Abbey is examining how, as a writer utilized to figure drama letter, he would evaluate the identity of William Hulton. Largest letter includes shades of grey since, on the entire, I believe how in lifetime human beings don't tend to be all wrong or all nice, Fellowes says. Yet in fact William Hulton was enterprising it for all wrong. I don't believe he had lot to buy out him. The Oscar-winning author is Hulton's large grandchild, but the is not a resource of honor. He was, he says, a brutal and terrible person. It was Hulton who, as a judge in polar West England, gave the infamous procedure for military to furiously scatter a peace, pro-democracy outcry in the centre of the UK's at first industry town. Screenwriters do lot of a nature's motives, so which does Fellowes believe hurt Hulton, who was unborn in a household of rich landowners? He was obviously a kind of hysteria, he says. He was obviously frightened of any topple of the set public procedure. To 100 years back, work-class human beings in Manchester and some industry towns in the polar of England were proper more vocals in their demands for policy reformation. They were irate on the reality how largest of the people could not voice, how corrupt practices was widespread, and how city areas were extremely underrepresented in Parliament. At low 50,000 human beings arriving at St. Peter's Fields on August 16, 1819 to listen drastic orator Henry Search campaigning for Parliament reformation. At the period, Manchester had no police force strength, so the Manchester Yeomanry was shipped in to hinder any upheaval. While Search began to say the troop tested to detention him, and attack nobody who got in its path. At low 11 human beings were annihilated and 400 injured. The events quickly became infamous in the clique, wherever they were duplicated. Peterloo, an ironical link to the fight of Waterloo, how had undertaken location 4 persons year previous. It was just the barest of ASA for any type of workers' motion, says Fellowes. Yet Hulton once went in several type of drive, offensive a team how turned on a team of lot female and lot family, a lot of whom hadn't made whatever. He describes Hulton's hard-handed answer as a full misreading of the position. Instead of pad up through the box and read several kind of go household communication, that obviously would include been the sensible item to do, he shipped the yeomanry to a mob who could not at one day scatter. They were seen by him to be resistance, but they were unarmed, they weren't resistance them in arms. The movie Peterloo, that goes on general produce on November 2nd, is aimed by Salford-born Mike Leah, who is named for his sandy tales of work-class lifetime. Though I don't believe Mike Leah and I are as one politically. I surely accept in him on who were the bad folks, told Fellowes. 7 year up Peterloo, as a judiciary of the world, Hulton had already condemned 4 persons Luddites to die for installation flame to a weave plant in West Houghton, close Bolton. One of such hanging was a 12-year-old little boy. Time story is complete of monsters. Historians tend to character critique while actions are in compliance in the standards of the period. Yet, in Hulton's instance, though that does not rescue his repute, they mind it was brutal and superfluous and inhumane, Fellowes says. Or so, in a feeling, he was already an perpetrator up the demonstrate at St. Peter's Box had always happened. I sense very disappointed for the men, female and family who were cut downward at Peterloo. I believe they were making no more than rather than manufacturing precise to such who would hear. The written was on the side, workers were connected to include several rights which human beings love. Hulton were hard to do was to struggle story, and to struggle the unavoidable. Amongst such on the reception end of the horse accusation was Mary Hayes, who was pregnant woman in her 6th kid. She had united the hordes, collected close her dilapidated household in Oxford Road, that almost 2 centuries after is held by a McDonald's small restaurant. Hayes's history has been investigated by her 5 times large granddaughter Denise Southworth. The 57-year-old told Hayes was one of the slaughter's neglected victims. Really, estimates of the definitive die duty differ wide and the real quantity will never be named. She was downtrodden by a equine, told Ms. Southworth. Reason would a female in her 40s who was pregnant woman wish to get portion in a revolt. The day following Hayes was injured, she began possessing fits. 4 persons months after she gave childbirth to a untimely infant, Henry. Mary dead fair up Yuletide, since she didn't die direct off, she wasn't calculated amongst the corpse, told Ms. Southworth, who is Manchester unborn and brought up. We gave more than importance in my high school in Manchester to the fight of Waterloo rather than to Peterloo. I believe it has been missed though in Manchester. I knew anything on it. In my storybooks they were too lively speaking on Napoleon and Waterloo. Ms. Southworth's feeling of indignation has induced her to accede the Peterloo Monument campaigning, that has the supporting of Peterloo celebrity Maxine Peake. It is fight for a constant monument to such who dead, quite rather than fair the little platelet that now sits on the side of the Radisson Inn. Ms. Southworth told, "Thou see circle there, the medium of Manchester, and see all these nice, fantastic, window, costly buildings, do human beings aware which happened there 200 year back? Do they aware on how the common work human beings came for a peace demonstrate and were butchered? We are ever said on Manchester's artistic achievements, but allows not overlook the place wherever human beings were annihilated for hard get a proper norm of residing. We owe it as educated man human beings to recall such who didn't include a voice and did not include any rights.